Welcome back to episode 2. You have Zach Simmons, yours truly, and my co-host, Kale Lopp. How you doing today, sir?
Very, very well.
Nice. I think we kind of alluded to it in the last episode, our first pilot episode, which if you listen to that, thank you for joining us. We are still kind of working this thing out, so hopefully I'm currently editing the episodes myself, and those will get better as we go along. I promise.
Yeah.
But I think we kind of alluded to we're going to be talking about RFIs today. I think we said it's the Great RFI War.
Yeah, the Great RFI War, which is a great. I mean, in my opinion, it's a great way to term this and define this, because it's so easy for somebody to grab that, and even if you've never dealt with construction on that side of it, you can see what, like, you immediately get the connotation.
Yeah.
And for so long, I mean, we alluded to this. I mean, in our opening episode, it was very much, are we changing the way we do design and construction? And most of that, I feel like, centers around how we get these projects built, how we produce these drawings, and then we bid these drawings, and then we have to build off of these drawings. And how do we get these projects across the finish line? And for so long, it's been such a contentious process, because I'm, as the architect, coming in and I'm saying one thing. I'm saying this is what it's supposed to be. This is the drawing. This is it. And there's a little bit of a, how dare you challenge what I've put on paper attitude. Yeah. And then from there we go into, bidding and construction. And the real challenge for you is, how do I mitigate my risk in this? How do I manage making sure that I've got numbers that really make sense all the way across the board, and that I've captured everything, and there's not some random obscure detail over here that is wrong or not the way I think it is, or whatever. And then that's where we get into, we're in construction, or even during bidding, which a lot of times during bidding, these are not necessarily called RFIs, but they're the same thing. But it's like, how do I get that information? How do I clarify what I'm bidding? How do I clarify what I'm building? And that is one of the most challenged, most contentious, most overwhelmingly fought over, I guess, processes in the construction industry, because we see, I mean, I know from my perspective, we see those RFIs come through and it's immediately like a defensive. It's like somebody walked in and said, "Why are you wearing that?"
Right.
And you're like, the hell?
Well, I really liked what you said when we were talking about this before the podcast. We've talked about this a bunch, but you said at one point, RFIs are supposed to clarify a project. They're supposed to provide clarity. Yeah. But as soon as that's sent, it immediately creates a war zone. That's, I like that. So that's what we titled the episode. But it does. It's, to your point, RFIs have become a tactic, and they've become a play on both, for the asking of the question. For those of you who don't know, an RFI is a request for information, whether that be about the plans, whether that be about the specs, whether that be about an existing condition on the job site or before the job even starts. But more often than not, at least on the general contracting side, like, I see it as a tactic. Like, hey, I gotcha. I found one. Yeah. And it's setting up for really a change order or a change event of some sort that is going to ultimately inflict some sort of financial, aspect to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what's crazy about it is, if we're all in the same room and we're all committed to getting this thing done, it really is, like you said, it's a request for information. You're trying to say, hey, I don't know what this means, or I don't know what this is. You've got a line on this drawing that I think is this. It could also be this, or this, or we've found an unforeseen condition. We've found a problem with the specs, like there isn't anything clarified on this product, or we've got a detail here that we're missing. There are all kinds of things. I mean, and instead of it being something that is like, hey, how can I get this information? We're all trying to get this built well. It becomes a battleground where, like you said, it's an I gotcha on your side, and then it's usually it can be a defensive response of like, I've got to find it somewhere in the drawings why that question isn't valid.
Sure. Well, and I think, I think it's important to start with where we start to see RFIs. I think that plays into really kind of how RFIs are treated or utilized in most projects. I mean, you as the architect, you're going to see them, pre-bid. You're going to get your list of questions. Questions are due by a certain date. Typically, a certain period of time before the bid is actually due. And you're going to get a list of questions to clarify and close maybe some of that scope gap. But, if you don't answer those in the appropriate way, or ultimately if the way that you answer then translates into a change that's needed, or it's not caught later down the road, that is, your answer right then and there pre-bid can and might potentially have an effect on an adjoining system later down the road. Totally. And so, if you don't get that right, which any architectural team, and just speaking to the architectural side of the table, if you don't get that right, then that's immediately a tension point between you and the customer that you're designing for of, well, you answered it in this manner. Now you're costing me this.
Yeah.
And that won't come up into the project until 3, 6, 9, maybe a year later.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can be a long time. And you're right. I think so. We've defined, I mean, we know what an RFI is. I mean, and for those of our listeners, we've defined that request for information. A big reason that why they come up. I mean, I think you're saying, I'm going to see those early on. Why I see them as a set of drawings is pretty massive. Any building that we're doing of any significant size, including a house. I mean, there's a reason why you need architects and contractors, because the average person does not want to try to figure out every detail that goes from a bare piece of ground all the way through to a fully constructed building. And I think that's so we see gaps between the concept of what we're trying to do. We see that in the design process, like, oh crap, that wall does need to have insulation in it. We didn't mark it as a wall type with insulation. We marked it as an open, but we need insulation in there. Or these are just examples of things like gaps in the design process. We didn't get a fully executed, like that design isn't clear. It isn't complete. That's a valid question. That's a valid concern. It does happen. I think budget and timeline concerns, and we talked about this a little bit in our first episode, is the earlier we can engage contractor discussions, the better we are long-term. Budget concerns, budget questions get clarified, timeline concerns, timeline question. I mean, how many times is it not that the design is wrong, but that the product that the designer is proposing is specifying, you're 8 months, we got to ship it in. It's 8 months. The client is looking at you going, so you're going to build this in 6 months, right? And you're like, right. I can't even get that product, whatever it is, for 8. So no, you're not going to be done in 6.
A 24-foot fan.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So,
well, and I think, at least from my experience, a lot of those early questions, you referenced early contractor involvement. It's coming from, and we can talk about this a little bit more later, because I do think it is important to talk about the current industry, the current broader industry on the upfront. In a lot of these public bids, most of the questions asked, regardless of them coming from the general contractor or not, those are 9 times out of 10 coming from a subcontractor base. Because
good point.
The The contractor, I mean, yes, in some more than others, especially as you get into some of the larger general contractors, they have a complete dedicated team that they are picking those set of plans apart. And so you will see a lot of contractor generated questions from those types of entities. You have a completely established, fully developed pre-con department with a staff of estimators and estimating assistants. And so you will start to see some really valid questions, I feel like, come from those.
Sure.
You
have a dedicated team in that scenario whose whole goal is to evaluate and question every aspect of those plans and quality control check all the way through.
Yeah.
So we'll get a lot.
And so the flip side of that coin, the cold side of that pillow, you get into the small to medium-sized contractors where they may or may not have an estimator. It may or may not be dependent upon the company methodology running projects cradle to grave, where it's a project manager that's going to be running that project, that it's their responsibility to bid that job. Well, they don't have the resources or time availability to read every plan page for that job. And so they are relying that much more on, hey, if questions are due the 5th, everyone that I've solicited, the 1,000 contractors that I've sent it to, questions are due the 4th. And then I'm going to format those. I'm going to plug all of those in. I'm going to find the couple egregious things that I've found in just quick plan review and doing maybe some overlays of site plan and stuff like that. And, I'm going to blast it out. So you do have, like I was referring to earlier, you do have a little bit of early contractor involvement, but it's in a completely different manner than what it needs to be.
Yeah. The mindset of that involvement is in a lot of ways literally about finding the problems.
CYA.
It's how do I cover my butt on this thing and make sure that I'm not going to be hanging out to dry come, 75% construction completion. And versus, I think, what we've talked about previously, where, you have, and you can do this at every scale. And that's the thing, is like, we're going to talk more in another episode, I know, coming, about small contractor, medium contractor, large contractor. What are those differences? How do they work? You just alluded to a few. At every stage, there's a value, and it's maybe different, but there's a value in that early contractor involvement. And it stems from this issue of RFIs, because the more comfortable people are with the design, with what they're building, with what they know. If somebody looks at you and says, hey, I need you to go out and basically build this doghouse. I need 4 walls and a roof and, little door in the front, and we're there. 90% of the world knows immediately I say doghouse, they know what that looks like in their head. Apply that same concept or that same thought process when we're trying to design a full-scale building. We've got experienced contractors, whether they're small, medium, or large, looking at this project. When they look at those plans, does it come to mind like, oh, I know how that framing needs to be. Yep, that insulation goes there. Okay, that makes sense. Electrical, ductwork running through here. We got that. Yeah, I got enough space in the ceiling. I can do this. They can see it in their head, There's a lot of projects and a lot of concepts, and the market is ever changing. New materials. I have material reps in my office, at least once a week. There's somebody bringing something new to the table. Well, that's a product that a contractor's never seen. And I put that in a drawing, and they're going, I have never seen that detail before. I've never seen that flashing run like that. I've never seen a roof done like that. How are we getting the water off right there? What is going on here? Every one of those questions, straight to an RFI in that scenario that you just described. Early contractor involvement gives you another path. I think that's what you're about to say.
Well, actually, I had another comment, regarding, which is just broader industry. But you're exactly right. There is tons of contractors, tradesmen that they've seen that detail before. They've seen that wall type. They've seen that system go together. They've seen this interaction between this glass and this beam and this ductwork having to go through. They've seen that before. They've been on a job that has had that. They've gone through those challenges and issues. But just talking to our peers, talking to some of the workforce development, that is actually going away with a lot of the younger generation coming into construction. We're seeing more often than not, and I think it's going to have to be attributed to that is kind of the older generation. I mean, with the average age of construction, the average construction worker being 54 across the nation, you have a near retirement, essentially complete industry that has not been replaced yet. And so,
Wow.
I think this is one of the challenges that we're going to, talking about RFIs and, trying to be specific to this episode, you're going to lose a lot of that. You're going to lose a lot of the, well, I've seen this before, I don't need to ask that question, because you got a new generation of individuals coming in that I don't know if it's the teaching base. I don't know if it's the experience base. It may just be a completely different mindset of the next generation behind, of not being in that 3D kind of visualization space from a real world perspective. It's going into software, not into what I have right in front of me. I think we're going to see a drastic increase from that specific thing for RFIs.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the way, I mean, I don't know how else to say this. That's the way they're going to learn.
Right.
They're going to ask the question, they're going to challenge the design, and they're going to get taught through that process of answering that, what that actually needs to be. And then they'll see it constructed. And when you start to connect those dots, both design and construction side, because we're seeing it too. I mean, we're seeing a real shift. I don't have the data that you have. I'd love to talk about that more in another episode.
We will.
But the shift to that younger generation, and what is their experience? What are they thinking about? Because the RFIs are going to be they are the only vehicle in the design and construction process that is a documented path to an answer. Everything else is just kicking rocks on a job site.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do with that? It's like, we actually legally document this. It becomes a part of the construction documents. It becomes a part of the contract documents. This is what an RFI is used for, so that everybody knows what we're building. And that's going to be a tool that I think effectively is going to get used to answer a lot of questions and grow the knowledge base of this younger contractor and designer world.
Sure. I mean, I'll ask this question. How many times have you just, been on a job site or been a part of, you're out there, you're talking to a trade contractor, and it's a napkin sketch for, hey, here's this detail. Here's what I'm thinking for this detail. Yeah, that there may not be a detail for that, but it's quite literally at the back of a receipt out of the truck, or it's a napkin. It's okay. This is what I got. Okay. Yeah, I'm good to go. And they're off and running. And now I'm seeing exactly.
It's why I carry one of these to every job site meeting.
But now, I'm seeing, well, just put it in a detail and send it to me.
Right.
That's the shift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which, and I don't know if that's, sorry to cut you off. I don't know if that's visualization based, like they just can't see it without a detail, or if that is, back again, CYA based, they've gotten burned too many times. I don't know.
Well, and for me as a designer, and having spent, I mean, we talked a little bit about my background, having spent 4 or 5 years in a project manager position, building work with a major contractor in our market, and the almost 20 years, 30 years now of experience as an architect.
Right.
Yeah. I'm one of the old ones, guys. and I think the technology shift is offering that too. I mean, it's easier for us as designers now. When we were full CAD, drawing lines on a piece of paper, or a digital piece of paper, because that's really what original AutoCAD was, putting that detail together and coordinating it back through a set could take days. Uh, and now, now what I'm seeing is my designers that are under me, my team, I can say, okay, here's the napkin sketch I drew on the job site.
Mm-hmm.
One of the many sketches hidden in my notebook. It's like I can come back to the office, hand that to them, right? Hand that to them, take a screenshot of it. They'll take a picture on their phone, convert it to a PDF, and put it into Revit. Build the detail the way I've sketched it, and say, okay, this detail is for this typical situation. Now it's produced across that whole set. There's a lot less human error in the set of drawings. And so what's amazing when we talk about how technology is influencing this, because from what I see on the architecture side, that's RFIs are existing still to answer those questions. We're not perfect in our drawings. And no matter how much technology happens, for those of you scared of AI, it's not like we're safe. We're safe because the ability to build it, draw it, know what it is, it's almost impossible to get the detail without knowing how, like that napkin sketch experience on job site. But what we're seeing is that technology is allowing us to produce the design or the response architecturally very fast. So there's a coming tension or expression from the design side that's just like, I don't have the experience to sketch it on site because I don't know what that looks like. As a designer, I don't know how exactly it's going to get built, but I'm happy to go back and I can produce this. Say I'm on the job site at 8 a.m. in the morning. If I can get back to the office by noon, I still have time to grab a sandwich,
Yeah, and sit
check
there and
some
play with it.
emails, do some research, and still probably produce that detail and have it on your desk as the contractor by 5 o'clock that night. And that speed with which we can produce the document is allowing us to say, yeah, I'll just get it to you in a detail. I'll draw the detail and send it to you. We can mark it up once it's in the RFI process. We can then pull the team together. So I think there's things like that I see as technology influencing this.
Along the lines of technology, let me ask you this: you can kind of tell when ChatGPT, something is ChatGPT written.
Yeah.
How many RFIs have you gotten that it's like blatantly ChatGPT written?
I mean, yes, we're seeing it. We're seeing them. Usually, what I feel like the ChatGPT is doing, and so this, I feel like, and I'm a proponent of using like the AI wave.
I am too.
So I see those, and I'm usually not that annoyed by it because 90% of the time it's taking the excess out. They're using it to simplify the conversation, simplify the wording, and make their point clear.
Or it's being more specific.
Right. Because I think a lot of times it's easy. I mean, I remember that my PM days where I could type you a page and a half email because I was trying so hard to cover every base and make sure that I was cornering every answer and forcing that to get resolved. What it ultimately ended in, as I matured in my construction knowledge and as I matured in my design knowledge, what I was basically doing is overwhelming the designer in a lot of data and thought process on my end that ultimately just slowed their process down. What would have been easier is to say, hey, and I think that's what ChatGPT is actually predominantly used for. Now, on that vein, I will say that I have legitimately, just as fun, said, okay, if I drop an RFI into ChatGPT, can it answer the RFI? Can it draw the detail? We're safe. It cannot draw that detail.
It cannot.
It cannot draw that detail for you. It's not anywhere near right. And even if you give it a precursor sketch, it still can't produce it. It will just help you formulate a clear and concise question, and it will help you formulate a clear and concise response. But you have to put the data in. You have to know what you're saying and what you're directing in that process. So I think technology is having an overall a positive impact. We can get faster responses. We can get clearer communication. the challenge, and this we haven't touched on yet really, the challenge I think that comes down the pipeline as we're dealing with RFIs is, okay, we can get them get answers faster. We can get clear, more concise questions and answers, but there is a legal aspect. I mentioned it before. These become a part of the contract documents. One of the real challenges of RFIs is that when I get that RFI, there's a very real question of, are you trying to stick me with money here? Are you trying to make me pay for a problem? Are you trying to, and on your side, and I know from my experience from that side of the coin, there's a real concern there for you. Like, why I'm asking this RFI so that I don't get stuck with a financial burden that's
Right.
really not mine to bear.
Exactly.
That's going to eat into my profit margin or eat into my contingency and ultimately make me not look as efficient or effective to the owner. There's all those questions. And I think we have to recognize that, at least up to this point, I feel like our conversation is centered around, like, it's a question, it's an answer. There's tension there, but why is there tension there? And the real answer to that is because when an RFI is issued, there's a certain amount of shots fired kind of element to that, because we all go immediately to, like, who's,
Sure. The Spider-Man meme.
The Spider-Man meme.
Yeah.
It's like, who's actually at fault here and who's going to foot that bill. And I think that's a real concern that goes all the way back to how we are approaching and addressing this whole process of building, constructing, designing our built environment. Because when we have that kind of tension, nobody's performing for the good of the client. The RFI is asking this question. The reality is, if we can get a good, clear answer, we can go build a good, clear building, and
Sure.
we can move on down the road.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about, when it's coming across, essentially, we'll just call it straight out weaponized. I think
You're right.
there's several different sectors of the market that it's more prevalent than others, and which I hope we get into it here in a minute. But there's defined methods of delivery where it almost promotes that RFI process to create change order or change events for the contract documents, for the budget. You look at least on our side, there's in the competitive market, there is quite literally contractors, I won't name them, but there's contractors in the market that their primary goal, rather than delivering a good bid, and talking about low bid, which is primarily, city, state, federal, any type of public entity procurement, they will go through and they will quite literally make a scope gap or a plan error log. They will then send those things to their preferred contractors and get a rough, estimate of what that's going to cost to actually fix that or to make that construction viable. And they'll have two bits going. They'll have what's been sent out, and then they'll have essentially their change order log ready to go. And they will purposefully lower their base bid to be awarded the job, because they know they have 25% equal value of what they're getting ready to bid and change orders ready to go. And those change orders have a higher profit margin than your base bid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because most of those contracts have a max allowable. So say we see a lot, your change order can't be or exceed 10% overhead and profit.
Yeah.
Well, if you're bidding it at 1% overhead and profit, and then you've got $500,000 worth of change orders on $1 million job at 10%, I'm great.
Yeah.
Let's lower that base bid. So you see that more often than not in public procurement, in that low bid kind of methodology. I think it does become more helpful, or at least less weaponized, in kind of that CMAR world. Like, okay, you're the contractor at risk anyway. You're asking questions because it is going to more often than not be a benefit to the job. Whether that contractor is responsible for design or not, that's going to influence that. But really, what you and I have seen, there is delivery methods that are viable that almost every RFI that's sent is for the betterment of the job, for the betterment
Yep.
of the customer, and it's not tied to a change order request. Being in that CMGC, the progressive design build, that alternative delivery world, at least in my experience, those are the only jobs that I've ever worked in my career that don't have a client change order.
Right. Well, and I think that's a good point to make, is that when you talk about RFIs as a change order generator, as a profit generator for certain sectors, um, it immediately changes the conversation from, well, why can't we just get a good answer so we can keep on going down the road? Which valid question. Let's get a good answer from the design team and move on down the road. The design team taking 6 weeks to answer an RFI, about window flashing is not viable. Like, let's get it answered. Let's get on down the road. But to your point, if it's a profit generator, it changes the concept there. And I think we've lived in a world that is very much that, low bid world. We've literally lived in that world very, very much. And that concept that you're explaining, which I want you, and now may be the best time to do this, but like, take the time to sit here and go, okay, low bid, we've got a low bid type world where it's a design bid build. You got a contractor who is giving you a bid. You have any scope gaps, anything like that are basically change events that create a budget change order. They can account for those, plan for those, see that as a profit margin type element. There are other delivery methods that are trying to eliminate the change order, and by doing that, by eliminating that kind of profit sector in the project, you really reduce the question mark or the concern, the tension centered around an RFI.
Sure. Yeah. Very much so. Well, and I've heard it used before, a profit silo inside the job. I could hear your phone ringing so much.
Is it doing that?
Yeah. Oh, it's vibrating the mic like crazy.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
No,
No,
I put it in silent.
you're
Sorry.
good. No, but no, I mean,
It
it very much is a profit silo that is utilized more often than not for the actual betterment of the job. It is quite literally only there to say, I gotcha, I found something wrong, here's a change order, Mr. Owner.
Yeah. So to kind of reset, because my phone got in the way. So to kind of reset, like, can you look at and just do really quickly walk through like how you see the difference in RFIs over different types of delivery methods? So what we see, and kind of describe this, because I don't even know if if CMAR makes sense to all of our listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've already kind of talked about low bid, which, and some of those for low bid, it is necessary to proceed, move forward on that job. An RFI is required. But, I think for every process, regardless of the delivery method, I think it's very important to outline, okay, we have an issue. We've identified the issue. A problem well-defined is a problem half solved. So, a part of our job as a contractor, let's define what this specific issue is and put that into a format that we can then send to the broader team, whether that be architectural, engineering, whatever the party that it's going to. Let's define this thing well. So when they get it, they don't look at us like we're idiots and we don't even know how to effectively communicate the problem. So, across any delivery method, have a problem. Okay, let's define it well. I think in most delivery methods, it is, okay, let's do a quick double check. Let's check the specs. Let's check the plans. Let's check the plan notes. Let's do a little bit of preemptive double check here just to make sure that we didn't miss something. And then immediately following that, in most is, CYA. Okay, how can I write this so I cover myself? I think right there is where you start to get the split with public. The rest of that RFI and the rest of that thread, if there is discussion going back and forth, is CYA, or it's a aspect of it's not my responsibility. We have looked for this, we have gone through the specs, we've gone through the plans, and there is nothing there that says that is my responsibility. So, I think all the way down to the answer on whatever that solution is in public bid, typically by the time that you've gotten to that answer, there's already been a discussion of a change event or a change order back to that client. That client's already been notified, hey, here's this RFI, here's this change event for this item. It's a prospective cost of this if we go this direction. Just putting that out there, if the architect validates that, then we're moving this direction. Then you get into CM at risk, or construction manager at risk, with essentially a guaranteed maximum price for a total job. But then that job, it has that blend of alternative delivery where it's it's ongoing design development. Some CMAR programs, the design development is the responsibility of the contractor. The contractor has a design firm under them. So that, and kind of what I alluded to earlier, it kind of starts to slow down those RFIs a little bit, because at the end of the day, they're still responsible. You have a guaranteed maximum price as that contractor to the owner that you're still going to deliver this job. So really the only things I see influencing there are, existing conditions, things that were unverifiable of, hey, we could have assumed all of these things and we never would have got there. We never would have found this. And so in that kind of format, it's still problem identification. How do I describe this well? What end result do I want to achieve? But there you do start to see that the question is really just for the betterment of the constructability. It's for the betterment of the build itself. It is truly just clarification of, okay, I saw this. This is kind of what we're thinking, but let's be fine-tuned or in tune with you and your team so we can both move forward collectively together. It doesn't completely remove the aspect for the change event or a change order in that setting, but it's a lot more restrictive. Right. And so, and then design build, design build is very heavy in the Oklahoma market, and a broader 5-state area. Again, that goes back to contract structure. Did the owner retain the design firm, or did the contractor retain the design firm? And then you bounce back and forth between both of the methods and just kind of those processes that I just kind of outlined. So, at least with my experience and speaking to, less of the negative aspect of all of this, more so, how do we start to change this? How do we start to improve the industry? How do we move forward to something better? At least you and I, we have both experienced numerous jobs now that every question asked, regardless of if it is a formal RFI or if it's just a question over email to get something very quickly, has 100% been for the betterment of the job or for the quality of the build or the constructability. Under these CMGC programs, and even the progressive design build stuff, we are fine tuning because we're asking a question. We're going back to the contractor, the trade partner that's building it. And okay, now we're trying to tie systems together. You do have that early contractor involvement, and maybe you get into those silos. I think mechanical and electrical are two really good silos. A lot of the times, 90% of those things can match. And then you have very short but impactful conflicts that if they didn't think of one thing or another, well, now you have wrong voltages for equipment. You've got things that don't interact well. And so, you still very easily have those mistakes. And I think it's important to talk about that there is methods that remove the negative aspects, like what we've been talking about, of they remove that CYA, they remove the cost aspect, they remove that kind of battlefield mentality that ultimately is beneficial for all parties involved, but especially the owner, because most you and I both know this, that 99% of the owners that we've worked for, they see it as, all right, architect, contractor, work it out. Like, you're there
figure
to,
it out.
just don't charge me, just figure it out. That's what they expect. And, we have done really well as an industry to exploit the loopholes in the contracts that we know are there that say, I get to charge a change order for this.
Yeah.
But, looking forward, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this, I really don't think that we will ever see a stop to RFIs. Probably up until the point, at whatever point that is in the future, that, these plans are, mostly AI developed, and it's looking for, even down to, calculation errors between products across 100-page set of plans.
Right.
What at what point do you think that RFIs actually end in the industry?
So this is a really interesting conversation, because I think there's a lot to unpack here. So contract structure is something that we really feel like, just from just 5 minutes ago, are talking about how that impacts what an RFI even really is. Certain contract structures and how that thing is going to be contracted on a legal sense define whether RFIs in this project are going to be contentious and, at times egregious, and at time and profit centric for the contractor. And then there's a lot of contract structure that tries to eliminate the need for that. If we take that a step further, I think that's, you're going to find this horizon line somewhere out there where really, and I've said this, so, let me be, hot take moment. Architecture, as we've known it, is a dying industry, because the old original architecture process evolved from kind of the master builder process, which, your original cathedrals were built by the mason, designed by the mason, because he had to account for every stone. Well, you don't have an RFI because the mason is the designer, who's also the producer, who's also the direct line to the owner. And I think we have come full circle to where we, out of a need to be fast, out of a need to be, out of concern for the complexity of our buildings, we started to specialize.
Mm-hmm.
You got people who specialize in building it. You got people who specialize in designing it. And then you've got even tiers below that, which you get into your subcontractors, and you get into your design specialties, i.e. MEP, electrical design, mechanical design, plumbing design, structural design, civil design, all of those things, like all of those engineering sides. So we specialize. And I feel us coming back around, because we're already seeing large firms that are multidisciplinary firms.
Mm-hmm.
We're already seeing large contractors that are multidisciplinary contractors. We've got the construction division, we've got our engineering division, we've got our architectural design division, we've got our concrete division they pour all of our concrete. So now we're shrinking that back in. Your RFI, if anything, becomes a internalized email going, what size rebar are we using on this? Because I'm getting ready to do my budgeting on the concrete, and the construction division is asking that of the engineering division within the same company.
Yeah.
Now the concerns that come with that, so the RFIs disappear, but the concerns that come with that, which are the concerns that were raised originally and why you saw the specialization happen, is, how do I know as the owner that when I hire whoever giant contractor that also is the engineer, that also is the architect. How do I know that price is real? And how do I hold them accountable to anything?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
everything's internal. But I do think there's a trend that way where we're seeing design build, we're seeing, and I don't think design build or CMGC, I think that's what those new alternative methods are trying to find a balance in, where we protect the client. There's protections in place. There's support for the client. There's recourse for the client if they're concerned about collusion or issues within the project. But it still also streamlines that process in a way that allows the design team to really effectively produce with the contractor.
Sure. Well, I think
So,
actually one of the individuals, one of my mentors, a guy that I respect a lot, on the project management side, he came from one of those companies that you're referring to. They're local here, or have a office in Oklahoma. And just learning a little bit about some of those massive entities that you were referring to, quite literally, they won't bid a job that they didn't design.
yeah.
And that's you take 90% of the market, because we're talking about $50 million and up, and
Yeah.
probably more than likely $100 million and up
And yeah.
projects, is really what those firms are doing. But that's so foreign to the rest of the broader market. If you have 99 projects over here, that is not that type of construction. You have
Mm-hmm.
one that may span 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
on that one single project. And so that's I think that there is a place and an opportunity, and at least for my personal business, I hope that we do move that direction, that we
Mm-hmm.
have those services to offer to ultimately better the project. Yeah,
Yeah.
if I have an engineering piece to that, yeah, I have an internal architectural piece to that. Yeah, I can draw it. I can be confident in the price. So when, talk about that setting, hey, the famous, what's your cost per square foot? There's a level of, I can truly be confident about what I'm
Yep.
telling you in this, because I'm the one drawing it. I'm the one delivering it. I have nobody responsible for that other than myself.
Yeah. We
But I think we're a ways off from that.
Yeah, well, I think the way we're seeing that produced now, that's starting to eliminating the RFIs, um, even within traditional design. Now, again, design, bid, build, that public sector piece, there's no way to manage that, mitigate that. Or at least this answer that I'm giving
Right.
doesn't touch that.
Sure.
But any negotiated work, whether it's CMGC, design build, or just the client hires a contractor and hires an architect and it's negotiated work, I see contractors and architects collaborating together, building relationships and
Agreed.
partnering. And that's how we're creating that on a smaller scale. So now we don't have to be these huge, big conglomerates. I've got these 5 people that I really work with regularly, and I eliminate the fear. I eliminate my question marks. I eliminate my concerns. And that goes both ways. I think it's easy for people to look at the contractor side and say, oh, well, you can be confident in your price per square foot, but, my design gets watered down. And I would argue that that's not true if it's done right. Granted, it doesn't have to be done right, but if it's done right, for me as an independent design firm who believes in good design, believes in quality, we have all kinds of clients across a vast sectors, and we do a lot of different work with different contractors. But when I have those moments with you or other contractors that we prefer to work with,
Mm-hmm.
I also feel confident in that project process, because I'm like, hey, because it's not an if, it's a when I miss something, our team doesn't check that box for some reason, whatever. Somebody was out sick that day and somebody was kind of trying to cover on that job site walk and we just missed it. We didn't see it. My partnerships save me. My partnerships give me confidence that they're going to call me and go, so your guy was out here. He didn't make a note of this, but we're concerned about this. What do we do with this? Before it becomes an RFI.
Right.
And
that happens a lot.
It happens a lot. And it's actually a really beautiful thing that I see starting to take shape in the market, where people are collaborating intentionally for their own best interest, but it's ultimately going to support and help the client. So, I mean, one of the things I would say, I know we're kind of coming to the end of this discussion, or at least this first part, but one of the things I would say is to the listeners out there that are prospective clients or developers, or those that are looking for that kind of thing, when you're looking at these things, one of the best things to think about is what that team really looks like. And whatever contracting method you use, if you pick good people on those teams and you don't go low ball, low bid, but you actually look for good collaborative teams that know each other and have worked together at some point, you're going to get a better product, and you'll save yourself a ton of money in that process because of that. Agreed. And it eliminates the RFI. It takes, if we look at the RFI as the encapsulation of the tension and combativeness that is architecture and construction industry, you can eliminate so much of that by just having good people around the table.
Sure. Well, and to my previous point, I think that's as a pipe dream for most contractors, including myself, of becoming that self-encapsulated entity of being able to do it all. But just like with what you said, if you can remove the negative pieces just by the contracting method, by the delivery method, you remove that combative nature from any given market between contractor and design, then you don't have a lot of the basis for a lot of the tension that we see. And and it's I think I'll give a real example of you and I have even had discussions on projects that we've talked about chasing in the past of, well, let's not say that because we don't want to look too close or have our companies too aligned with each other, for competitive nature of just by default, we as business owners have to remain competitive in the market. Well, why is that? Well, it's the confines of the way that the market just typically operates. And, even with us being friends and, even with friends from other architecture firms, like I can't go out and we can't publicly establish a line of friendship there or known public involvement at risk of either one of our firms losing projects or losing potential business in the future. And that is directly dictated by the competitive, combative, and, somewhat, I don't know what's necessarily a good word for it, but just the turmoil in the market that is directly a development of low bid and or like delivery methods. Because you remove that and then you get exactly what you were talking about of having two firms that know each other, work well together, have each other's best interest. And ultimately when those problems arise on the job, y'all are just working it out, and the owner typically is more than likely not even going to hear about it. Or if they do, it's hey, this came up. I just want to make you aware of it. It's already been resolved.
Right. And we saved you a few dollars in the process, possibly. Right. I mean, I've seen that happen. And I think that's one of the biggest mind shifts that has to happen in the new era that we would love to be discussing here with construction and design, is that an RFI is not going to ever 100% go away. I mean, even in those moments that we're talking about right now, or the large conglomerate type firms, multidisciplinary firms, RFIs are still used. RFIs are still clarified, but needing to be used. But ultimately, it should be a tool for clarity. It should be a tool for collaboration. It's that raising your hand in class and asking a question. That's literally how simple an RFI should be. And if we can shift that to where we understand why we're using RFIs and what we're using them for, and take the weaponizing out of it, take the contention out of it, we can become better designers, better builders across the market all the way, because we can believe in and trust the process that's established to get us where we need to go.
Yeah.
So,
And
that's
not
my
if
ultimate take on it.
not it if you as the designer say one wrong word that it's going to be a knife to your back of, well, there's a change order and it's Kale's fault.
Right. We're seeing that. We're seeing a better, I think we're seeing a trend toward a better process there. And I think a big part of it is that push in both the technology, like we talked about, in the contracting processes, the alternate options that are available there. All of those things are helping take those knives away from our back and our throats.
On both sides.
On both sides, and help us move in a direction where it's really about the betterment of the project and the quality of the relationship to the client.
Yeah.
So
I will say one real quick note back on technology. I am, just testing and trialing. It's very easy now, especially with a good set of plans, to take the set of plans, the set of specs, and I just by playing with ChatGPT was able to create a prompt that it's a scope gap check. And I'm able to plug that in, and it even has the variable for, okay, well, things that maybe aren't just true scope gap, but oddly defined or plan oddities. And so that process is becoming better. It's becoming faster. I can plug that in. It takes less than 5 minutes to plug in a full set of project documents and feed it that narrative and just let it run. Well, maybe 5 minutes later, I get a 23 item thing of, hey, you should probably check this, or this is direct conflict, or this is clear scope gap. That is then at least bettering that process on the front end. I think there's still going to be those contractors that utilize it to their advantage, which I don't think you're going to get away from that. The market has to weed those contractors out themselves, but it's at least becoming better from the aspect of, if you have newer or younger individuals in the market, they're going to default to that more often than not. And so projects, and maybe at least probably in a sooner case rather than later, we see projects that there may be more questions on the upfront, but those questions are at least asked and accounted for, and you're able to make plan adjustment prior to the bid. And so while we still, at least, we'll speak to Oklahoma, while we're still heavily centered in a low bid market, at least maybe some of those jobs are delivered closer to the original bid, because there is so many questions being answered on the upfront, thanks to, things like our AI.
Yeah. No, I agree.
One question in closing, because I know we're getting ready. I think we just kicked over an hour. What is your worst project experience with an RFI?
Probably the worst RFIs experience that I've had was a roofing situation. Leaks are a major issue in construction design. We know that they're a huge warranty problem. RFIs were asked. This is when I was on the construction side, so I should probably clarify that. I was the one asking the RFI. We got clarification. This roofing issue, I think that RFI circled for almost 3 months before we resolved a solution that everybody could be happy with, like before we got it to that point. And I think it was the belabored process, because it was contentious, because nobody wanted to really own a mistake. Nobody really wanted to own the fact that what was specified was probably a lesser product or a lesser quality product. And I've done the same thing on the architecture side, where it's like, I think this will work. It's this product will work. It gets us in budget or whatever in our mind, as a design team. Let's save some money there. Let's move forward, make a mistake. And you open the door to this like cycle. And it's like, if you just own your mistake and say, hey, I should have spec'd this instead of that, we could have been down the road because we were ready to switch. We already had it proposed. We were like, what about this?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well,
So,
I won't leave you hanging. I'll share mine, which I'm going to have to shoot myself in the foot on this one. And I've already talked about this on another podcast. As a younger PM, I was working a historical project downtown, and we were adding a second floor to a historic building in a design district. So, and at least for the industry folks, as soon as you say design district, it's like, you better build it exactly what the plans say, or you're going to have real major issues.
Yep.
So the intent of this was, there's a brick building, and we're essentially floating structural steel above it, and then making that a structural deck and going up and adding a modern second floor to this existing building in Bricktown. There was a conflict between the architectural and the structurals as far as steel heights. I think same kind of thing. We went through, we lasered the building, we measured the building, measured it again, took, gosh, I don't know how many trips that we took to measure that thing. And that process, I think it was probably 3 weeks, going between structural and architectural and making sure everything was correct. And at the end of it, I was like, guys, I've got to get steel coming. I feel confident in these measurements. Is everybody okay? Does everybody feel a level of confidence with these measurements for the detail to come out perfect? Because the way it was designed was, there should only be a mortar joint between the king brick, the existing king brick that is stood up on its end with the parapet, and the steel. I had a massive I-beam that was supposed to essentially just levitate right above that top of existing building.
Right there.
When I tell you that I missed that measurement by 13 inches, I couldn't see it. It was one of those things that you just couldn't tell, and you set the I-beam, and then all of a sudden I've got this gap above the top of the parapet brick. And steel's already set. I've got a massive crane on site. Steel's here. All the columns are in the ground and concreted in, embedded in. There was no changing it after that. I had enough space to fit a king brick vertically in that gap and still have space left over. So, and I don't think that was probably anybody's fault except my own. But going back to that RFI process, ultimately, some things you just can't sort out. You can talk about it, you can plan, you can anticipate, and at the end of the day, everybody's wrong. But good Lord, make sure that your PM takes good measurements. So,
well, I mean, I think that's the takeaway. We don't have all the answers. Obviously, we're learning right along with most of you that are probably listening, in the sense that we have industry experience, but there's a new scenario of a 13-inch gap or not.
Sure.
Every day,
yeah,
somebody missed something, and we're trying to figure out how to solve it. That's part of what we love about this industry. It's also part of the challenge. But I think the reality of culminating this episode and saying, okay, what if I have to put this in a sentence? I don't think RFIs are the problem. I think they're a symptom of the struggle that we're going on with this traditional system of design and construction. It's part of what we're talking about. We've been talking about it. This is the second episode that we're talking about it. We're going to continue to chew on this thing, circle this thing, and work through it. But RFIs aren't the problem. However, I think they are a symptom of the problem. The system of how we do this and understanding that system on the broader spectrum is what's going to really help people navigate it well.
Agreed.
Let's fix it together. Like let's keep talking about it. Let's figure it out.
Agreed.
What's our tag? What's subscribe and follow? What do we got?
Yeah, no. So thank you for joining us for episode 2. This has been the Great RFI War. And this is Constructive Criticism, where architects and contractors build better together. Follow us. We've got Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and YouTube Shorts coming up. So tune in again. We should be posting a new episode every Friday. after the official launch. This episode is being recorded before the official launch. So looking forward, podcast episodes will be posted on all of those platforms every Friday. You can look for the new episode and come back for another one.
All
Thanks,
right.
Cale.
Thank you.
See ya.